Somewhere right now, there is a message you've been meaning to send. A person you keep saying you'll call back. A truth you keep deciding to tell. Later. An apology you've rehearsed in your head 100 times, but never actually said out loud. You are certain there will be a later. You always have been. On the morning of August 24th, in the year 79, the people of Pompeii were just as certain. It was a city of nearly 20,000 people, built in the shadow of a mountain. They had lived beside their entire lives, a mountain that had been quiet for so long. Most of them had stopped thinking of it as anything other than scenery. That morning, a baker named Modestus was pulling fresh bread from a stone oven. 81 loaves found centuries later, burned exactly where he left them. A woman in a wealthy house was arguing with her husband about money, about a debt, about something that felt urgent at the time. Children were playing in a courtyard, chasing each other round a fountain that still ran with water. No one thought to question. Nobody packed a bag. Nobody said the important things, because nobody knew. Not the baker, not the arguing couple, not the children at the fountain. That this was the last ordinary morning they would ever have. You are certain too? That is exactly what they thought. At just past noon, the mountain the Romans called Vesuvius did something it had not done in living memory. It split open. Not with the warning anyone understood in the moment. A column of ash and pumice rose 18 miles into the sky, higher than commercial aircraft fly today. Pliny the Younger, watching from across the bay, later described it as shaped like an umbrella pine, a wide trunk of smoke spreading into a canopy that blotted out the sun. Within hours, day became night. People who had been going about their ordinary errands found themselves walking through darkness in the middle of the afternoon, ash falling like gray snow that did not melt. The sky that was always there disappeared completely. If you had 30 seconds to gather only what truly mattered to you, not what was valuable, not what was replaceable, would you already know exactly what to grab? Some people in Pompeii ran toward the harbor, hoping for a ship, toward the roads leading inland, hoping for distance. did not run at all. They stayed in their homes, behind their familiar walls, because leaving felt more frightening than staying. Because they believed, even as the ash piled higher against their doorways, that there would still be time later to decide what to do. There wasn't. There wasn't. What the ash did next is the part most people never forget once they learn it. It didn't destroy the bodies the way fire would have. It buried them gently, layer by layer, in a fine gray powder that hardened slowly around them, like a mold closing around whatever shape it touched. Centuries later, when archaeologists finally understood what they were looking at, they began pouring plaster into the hollow spaces the decomposed bodies had left behind inside the hardened ash. The ash kept their shape long after it kept nothing else. What emerged were not statues. They were casts of final moments, exact positions, exact gestures preserved with a precision no painting or carving could ever achieve. A man curled tightly into himself near a doorway, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around his own head, in the universal position of someone trying to disappear from something too large to fight. A mother in a house archaeologists later named the House of the Golden Bracelet, her arms still wrapped completely around a child she could not save and would not, even in her final breath, let go of. A dog in the courtyard of a different house, still tethered to its chain, twisted into a final desperate position, trying until the very last second to break free. These are not statues. They are not symbols. They are the last positions of people who did not know in that exact second that it was the last one. Frozen mid-sentence, mid-decision, mid-life. Almost 2,000 years after Pompeii went silent, a woman named Bronnie Ware was working a job she had taken almost by accident, caring for people in the final weeks of their lives. Over the years she spent sitting beside hospital beds, holding hands that were growing colder, listening to people who finally had nothing left to perform. She began to notice that the same handful of regrets kept surfacing again and again, spoken in different voices, different accents, different lives. She started writing them down. Not one of them said, "I wish I had worked more." Not one person in the final days of an entire life said they regretted not climbing higher, not earning more, not achieving something the world would have applauded. The regret she heard most often, the one that came up more than any other, was this: I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. The second most common: I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And the third: I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. They said it at the very end when there was nothing left to lose. The people of Pompeii never received a warning. The mountain gave them no time to reorganize their priorities, no final conversation, no chance to gather the people they loved and finally say what they had been postponing. We are not Pompeii. We are not buried in a single afternoon without any notice at all. Every single day we are given is, in its own quiet way, the warning they never got. The question Bronnie Ware's patience finally answered at the very end of everything. What do you actually regret? Is a question you are still allowed to answer differently. You still have time. That is the part they didn't have. So ask yourself, gently, honestly, what have you been postponing? Who haven't you told the truth to? What version of your life have you been too afraid to actually live? Because it wasn't the version someone else expected of you. You are not made of ash yet. Not everyone in Pompeii spent their final hours in fear. In a cellar beneath one of the city's grander homes, archaeologists found a group of people huddled together. Not scattered, not alone, not trying to escape past each other. In panic, together. They had chosen in those final hours to be in the same room as the people they loved, holding on, literally, to each other until the very end. They did not face it alone. That much they chose for themselves. In another part of the city, archaeologists uncovered a woman wearing every piece of jewelry she owned at the exact same time. Rings on nearly every finger, bracelets stacked along both arms, a necklace layered over another necklace. Not stolen treasure, not looted along the way. Her own belongings, the things she had clearly loved enough to keep, to wear on special occasions, to save for later. In her final hour, she stopped saving them. She put on everything at once, as if she had decided, somewhere in that chaos, that there was no longer any good reason to keep beautiful things locked away for someday.
Nothing safe for later.
everything worn today. None of these people knew they were being watched. They had no idea that 2,000 years later, strangers would stand in museums and lecture halls, looking at the choices they made in their very last moments. They weren't performing courage for an audience. They were simply choosing, in the most honest hour any of us are ever given, to hold the people they loved and to wear, finally, the things that mattered, instead of saving them for a someday that never arrived. Someday never came for them. It is still here for you. Pompeii is not really a story about death. It is a story about all the ordinary mornings that were never supposed to be the last one. And the people who spent them exactly the way they always had, because nothing told them to do otherwise. The baker kept baking. The couple kept arguing about money instead of saying what they actually felt. The children kept playing, certain the fountain would run forever. They thought there was more time. You don't need a volcano to learn what they learned 2,000 years too late. You only need today. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments. What's one thing you'd finally say or do if you knew today mattered the way Pompeii's last morning did? And if you want more of these forgotten human moments hidden inside real history, subscribe.